Hi, everybody. This is Jay from the library, and we're going to talk about APA formatting for the next 10 minutes or so. First I'm going to do is I'm going to share screen and show you how to get to the library homepage, and we'll look at a little thing first, and then we'll answer some questions. So on the library homepage, you can get to this page by going to the college homepage, and then there's a link down at the bottom for library. And the reason this is important is because it has a couple of guides on how to do APA. And there's a link here for APA. And it's a short little guide. And I just to everybody to remember that APA style is, a lot of people think it's just the citations, but it's two things. It's the organization and content of your paper and the citations. And even the citations are two parts. They're the end text citation, which is the stuff that's in the parentheses, and then there's the citation at the reference list at the end of the paper. But my favorite thing of this whole thing is this sample paper in APA style, because it gives you an idea of what your paper is supposed to actually look like. And you can just use this as a guide, and it has all these little text box and things that tell you like what you're supposed to do when you do a paper. And you just scroll through and you find all the different stuff, and it shows you like what they should look like. That's an example of a citation right there. And then if you go to the end of this document, there's an example of what the references are supposed to look like. And so you just copy this basically. The one thing that's weird about APA citation is that it has these second lines that are indented. That's called a hanging indent. And that's really rare. But if you go to Google Chrome or Microsoft Word and look for hanging indent, that would be the place that you would find that. So that's hanging like HANGING indent. But all the software has that. Yeah, and so let's say you're doing your paper or whatever, and there's a lot of ways to do a citation. So if you search stuff in the library, it will build the citation for you. But if you're just out on the internet and you find a citation, you probably want to use a citation builder, and there's one here. And it's just going to ask you, like, let's say I want to create a website and I want to do a citation style of APA 7, and I just fill in the information as best I can and then click build citation, and it builds a citation for you. It's really, really easy. So some things that come up are like, what if it doesn't have this information? So like if it doesn't have an author. So the first thing about that is if it doesn't have an author, a lot of what you're doing is thinking about what credible sources are. And if it doesn't have an author, that's kind of a little bit of a red flag for me, because it should have an author, because then you can find out the background of the author and see if the author is an expert and stuff like that. So if it doesn't have an author, that's not always a bad thing, but that's a little red flag for me. I would start thinking about whether or not that's a credible resource. It's possible that it isn't, because it's possible that an organization is doing the publishing, so it wouldn't have an individual author. That's okay. But anyway, that's just something to think about if you ever see when there's not an author. Yeah. So let's go back and then we'll look at that that guide again. So it has a bunch of other stuff about how to do APA citations. So things like little guidelines, and I tried to get it down to 3. So it's like cite only the things that you read and you actually added to your paper. Don't just cite a bunch of stuff. When you can, use primary sources. And the third one is really important. And this is another way about whether or not something's a credible resource. If you ever see data, like data is like facts and figures, they should always have a citation of where that stuff came from. And if they don't, then you're looking at something on the internet and you're like, it doesn't tell you where it got that information. For me, for an academic paper, that's probably not a good resource, because I need to find out where that came from so I can verify the truth or the accuracy of the data that they're using. And that's another important thing about credible resources, like whether or not it's accurate or not. So I did a bunch of talking. I'm going to stop for a second, see if your instructor has any questions.
Yeah, so we read a lot like cdc.gov type sites. And like you said, sometimes these sites don't have an author. So how would you cite that?
Yeah, so let's say we go into the if we go to that citation builder, yeah, CDC is a perfect example. That's probably okay because they're all working together, right? So it's more what they call a corporate author. So the corporate author means that's the name of the organization. So let's
Uh-huh.
go and we'll cite a website, and we'll do APA 7. So if you don't have one, you can just leave that blank.
Mhm.
And it will, or, you can actually see how it says this corp thing here. So you
Right.
could put the author as CDC right there and it would generate it like that. So let's just do a sample one. So this is like the
Like
title of
in
pages,
monkeypox or something.
data about monkeypox. Yeah, something like that. Oops. And be sure to spell everything right. That's important. And we'll just call it CDC today. I don't know if they have anything like that. So, and then we choose the date. And let's say we want, you mostly want it to be really current information. So let's say it came out yesterday. You go in and you choose the date, and then you click build citation. And then it builds a citation for you. And then you can just copy it and put it in whatever your thing, or you can use this little link, copy citation.
Perfect. And then for the in-text citation for that, you would put 2022 CDC.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And if there's like more than one from CDC 2022, there are rules about that as well. And so you could go in there and do that. And that would be, if you go under here, there are more rules, basic principles of reference lists. So if you need like more information, there's a link there that explains the less common ones that may come up. So it gives you the basic principles, how it's supposed to work. Because all that kind of stuff's actually really common that,
Yeah.
that they don't have an author or whatever. These are all like super common things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So yeah, so that's the kind of basic idea of doing APA citations. And this is where all this stuff comes from, the publication manual of the APA. So we're on version 7 and we have a bunch of copies at the library if you want to look at them. And if you ever need to get help, I'm here all the time to like help you with APA citations, and not just in person. You can email me or you can come to the library, or actually if you go to the library site, there's a, oh, it's right there. Sorry. If you need help, you can just email this or call this number. And we can do that. And tutoring will help as well because the tutoring is really good at doing citations as well. And you should totally go to tutoring, even though you think you shouldn't go to tutoring, because it's awesome. And I'm just going to refer everybody to tutoring because I
And
think
it's
they're awesome.
free.
And it's free. Yeah. Yeah. And they're not that busy. So you'd get right in there. So yeah.
And you can do it on Zoom too.
You can. Yeah. So if you go to tutoring, let's say we want to do a Zoom tutoring thing. You go to student services and there's a list. There's one for academic support center, and they have a way to make an appointment. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And the tutors are other students?
They have both. They have students and professional tutors.
Okay, that's
depending
awesome.
on the topic. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep.
And then the last thing I wanted to ask you about is what makes a credible source? Like,
Okay.
how do I know like the vaccine website I'm reading about is a good one or a false information one?
Okay. I'm going to try to do a whiteboard. Okay. So the first thing I would say is everything is a little different. So like thinking about this is something that I can't tell you exactly what a credible source is. And I know that seems weird, but like that's part of the deal about being a student in college is that you have to figure this stuff out for yourself. But there are general rules. So let's see if I can figure out how to do this. There are things like authority is the author and expert. my gosh, I'm not good at this. I feel
I've
like I
never,
know what I'm doing, and then I'm like,
yeah, I've never tried that feature.
yeah, I'm trying it right now, so it's probably not the best. So authority, is the author an expert? And there's general rules about like what makes a person an expert. So like in this field is like, are they experienced medical professional, for example? Do they cite their research? It's not just things they make up. One of them that's interesting then becomes accuracy. And so what I mean by saying this is, so if they do an experiment or they do you know, in public health, there's like surveys kind of like, and if it's replicated a bunch of times by different organizations, then that's probably closer to the truth. So
Right.
the thing is, if you see one, you're like, well, you're never going to be quite sure that they did their methodology was good. And they may not be trying to trick you or anything, but their methodology might not have been that good. So try to find situations where they've other organizations have done the same study. So that's important. The other one is bias. So like, are they trying to convince you of something? And you see this a lot with vaccine stuff.
Mhm.
And this is actually kind of a hard one. I mean, that's a hard one because it's like all the vaccines were produced by corporate entities. So you're like, oh, did they want to sell you on their vaccine? And but at the same time, it's like, well, the vaccines had a lot of efficiency and efficacy and all that stuff. So it's like there's a lot of thinking involved about that one. So like, and like I was saying, there's no complete good answer for all this stuff. It's like something that everybody has to think about. Is it current? So so the newer the better, especially when it comes to medical research and vaccines and stuff. That's all changing so fast. And you know, with COVID, there's all the different variants and like all the data that was true 6 months ago might not be true today.
Right.
Or somebody tries a different methodology and that becomes the dominant methodology because it was better. So that's part of what makes learning about COVID confusing, because we can't assume that we're correct and then say, well, that's just how it is, because that's not how it is, because it may change. And so then you have this awkward conversations with people about like, well, I read an article, but that article is 6 months old. And in this world, 6 months is a really long time.
Yeah.
So that's true with like legislation stuff too. Like when laws change, if you're operating based on a 6-month-old law, it may not be the law anymore. So there's some circumstances where it's really extreme about being current.
Yeah.
Which is a hard one to understand if you haven't done a lot of research, because it's easier to find stuff that's been around for a while. And so, and it's really hard to know if you're having the most current. And so that's why you need to really work on the breadth of your research, not necessarily the depth so much, but the breadth, which means like lots of different examples of something similar, if you can, to try to make sure that you're the most current on this stuff. Yeah.
Perfect.
And I'm going to stop doing this. I don't know how to make this go away. I probably should have planned this ahead of time because I don't know how to make this. Oh, there it is. Whew. Yeah. So that's APA formatting and credible sources. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jay.
Okay. Thanks.